Hello everyone, welcome to Doorkickers 2. This is a video I've been wanting to make for a while, but I haven't been able to make it because for the game Doorkickers 2, it had some problems for a while with OpenGL and AMD CPUs, and I have an AMD CPU, so when you were playing Doorkickers 2 for a while, you would eventually get some weird FPS problems, but it looks like there has been some kind of fix and now things look pretty great. I'm not going to sit here and say that everything is just peachy keen because I'm already seeing some weird artifacting going on, so I think maybe there's still some kinks to work out when it comes to bugs. But anyway, I think it is good enough to make a video on it, which is something I've been wanting to do. So what is Doorkickers 2? Doorkickers 2 is a top-down, tactical, close quarters combat simulating strategy game. And it happens to be my favorite tactical game and one of my favorite games in general. And the goal of today is to take you through the tutorial of the game to give you an idea of why I feel that way. And there are many reasons, and so hopefully throughout this you will come to enjoy it. I will say that this analysis of the tutorial will not be probably like a typical walkthrough. It'll be more of like a guided tour of why I like the game so much, and so I think because of that it's going to be kind of tedious. So if you're really dedicated fan, I guess, to either what I do or what this game is all about, then feel free to stay. If you are not interested in something like that, then you may want to move on. So let's start off by taking a look at how Doorkickers 2 is arranged. So like I said before, it's top down. This first mission is the very first tutorial mission. And you can tell that just because of the limitations of your path, hence Path to Suck Less, the name of the first mission, your path through the level. So here you can see my soldiers here, and then there is quite a lot that I don't know, and that is rendered in a field of view here that you can see. As you can see, if I were to move my character this way and have them turn, then you can see that I have explored or come to know this area. And if I turn back and I look this way, then I have this interesting faded aspect of the game where you can still see what you have explored, but you can tell what you're looking at currently and what you're not looking at currently. So I think that's just a nice way of describing to the player what they can see and not see at any given time. So before you even begin to move your character around, you are already given feedback on what information is given to you at any given time. And that's good because in a top-down view, you really get an enhanced vision of what you are likely to encounter. It's almost like for every mission in Doorkickers 2, you're given the blueprints, but even more so, you're given a sort of unprecedented access to not only that, but where objects are placed to give you an idea of how you're going to run through a particular level. So I think the field of view option is really nice for what you can see and what you can't see. So another thing I wanted to talk about is just the way that it gamifies the tactical genre. So a lot of games struggle for realism, but they forget a little bit of the authenticity of feeling like you are a special operations, special forces member. So Doorkickers 2 manages to do just enough in this genre to make it feel authentic, but it also manages to create a system that feels really fun and rewarding and responsive to play. So one of the things that I wanted to show here to prove that is when you're moving your characters around, your characters have a rifle because they are a soldier. Now when they're walking up towards certain things, their rifle will respond to whether they are against surfaces or not against surfaces. So some shooters manage to do this and do this particularly well. And I'm not going to sit here and talk about the realism of whether a soldier can hold their rifle up next to them while they're close to a surface or close to another soldier. I'm sure that soldiers have a workaround for that when out in the field. But as you can see here, you can tell immediately that the movement feels very responsive when you're strategizing, because that rifle down, rifle up is just one more aspect of getting good at the game. So that's another thing that I really love, is the responsiveness and the way it feels authentic, even in just the minor movements. So as you can see, I'm moving my soldiers with a drawing mechanic where I can move my characters to a certain direction to face a certain way, and there is a timer at the bottom to show how much time I've spent playing this particular level. So I can pause at any time, and as you can see, it doesn't really pause time as much as it pauses the actions of the people around us. So I think that's a nice way to give some dynamic movement into the level while still keeping it paused. So the things that they chose to pause, I think, was a nice touch. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started here based on what we know so far, that I can move my characters around and that there is going to be a level of authenticity to how I move characters around. So with that, I'd like to get started. So in this level, you're really only given one avenue through the level. And so as you can see here, it's moving in a kind of curvy S pattern. Now what's interesting is that you would think that as we make our way through the level, once we got to this point, it would make sense to curve maybe back up, because we'd be doing this swerving thing. So here instead, it's actually going to have us curve in, and that's the twist of the level. And most of the challenge of the level is going to occur here at the end for reasons that we'll talk about when we get there. Now, that's not to say that that's the only path through this level. Veterans of the game know that if you have a wall breach, you can go down here, and you can actually wall breach through the garage, provided that you are aware of certain threats to you as you make your way to do that. And if you were to blow the garage doors open, you would have unprecedented access to not only shooting the perp in the bathroom, which we'll see later, but also perhaps killing in the explosion this perp here, and stunning maybe a perp here, giving us a clear shot or an easy shot for another kill. And so all of that is an option for a veteran player, provided that they know that the game is relatively destructible. A lot of the things in the game, such as walls and doors like this, can be blown apart, which is great. So what else do I want to say here? So we're about to turn this corner, and as we get into combat, I should mention a disclaimer that I love the tactical genre. It's sort of a guilty pleasure of mine, growing up in the United States and growing up with war movies. But also keep in mind that I am not a member of the armed forces or a veteran of the armed forces. So I really know nothing when it comes to proper military training. I'm just a dude who likes this video game and likes other tactical video games. And so because of that, the skills and strategies that I've learned help me to serve or to do better in this game. But I don't necessarily think would be applicable for a variety of reasons. And some of those I'd like to go into as we make our way along. So we're about to turn our first corner. As you can see here, the level keeps us from engaging in any way except this way. That's not necessarily the case. As you can see here, I could blow this particular wall open, like I mentioned before when it came to this garage door. So even in the way that they limit your options here, there are still options for veteran players that they should know about. So one of the most difficult parts of Doorkickers is to round corners in a way that keeps your gun up. So what I'm doing here is I'm drawing a line to have my first soldier interact and turn the corner here, and I have given a pie symbol. So the pie symbol allows them to keep their eyes focused on wherever the slice of pie is, this pizza pie slice here. So their eyes will and their body will remain focused on that spot, so that when they turn, they will be constantly rotating. So you'll get to see that in action here. And what we're going to see here is usually there is an enemy here at the welcome mat, and then what will happen next is usually there is a another soldier that comes in here, and that's a good thing to teach the player for a variety of reasons. So this first part gives you an idea of what combat looks like and feels like in a non-threatening way, because usually this soldier is either facing down here, facing this way, is totally unaware that you're about to turn the corner, and so you basically get a free shot. The next soldier that comes through very quickly, and I think this is intentional. I think likely the soldier is right here just out of the field of view, and it teaches the player that soldiers can and will advance on the player when they hear a threat. So let's see if that's actually how it turns out. Yeah. Okay, so in this case the soldier was not here, but the soldier was here, and then we had the new soldier here to investigate. And luckily we had our soldier still trained on this door, and no one is moving, so it was a good set of kills. Now for this next part, we first of all need to get rid of our pies, otherwise the player runs into this weird thing where a character will move but still focus on that pie, so they will actually turn around and they will start backpedaling. So that's a hard thing to learn about the game. So we have our first threshold. Now, one of the ironic things about Doorkickers 2 is the first level has no doors. So how can you kick down doors that don't exist? I think this was obviously intentional. Doors are very difficult as a part of Doorkickers 2. They are definitely a difficulty spike. For anyone who knows close quarters combat tactics, doors provide a challenge and a possible fatal funnel that can get people killed. So with that, I think it was a smart choice to leave doors out until the second mission. So what we're going to do here is we're going to move our soldiers up, and our first soldier has situational awareness, so we're going to keep him trained on the door. And then we have another soldier here that'll be behind, that'll allow us to have a throwable, but can also cover the door should there be multiple perps that come out in force. Now what's interesting here is that the level is sort of trying to train you into good tactics. So as you can see here, there are quite a lot of objects that cover this side of the doorway. And that's because you don't really want to cross open thresholds that lead into unknown informative rooms. Like, we don't really know what's going on in here. And so the level design is trying to teach you to keep your soldiers here. And there are quite a lot of objects as well to keep you uninterested in going over here, right? There is some dead space here, but as you can see, they've tried to put tires here just to inform you that, hey, it's highly unlikely that there's going to be anyone here. But some people may still be anxious about that place over there, and they would want to investigate, which we could if we wanted to take a detour and look down that way. But I happen to know that there's no one there because this is the first level. It's a tutorial level. So as you can see here, my first soldier is actually, they do not have their gun up, but if I were to turn, now the gun is up. But as you can see, what's interesting here is that my gun is now in view of whoever is in there. Obviously they know that we're here because of the non-suppressed weapons that were fired just outside their doorway. I'm going to push back a little bit here. So now it comes to our first clear. And as you can see, we have some objects here. We have a chair here, we have a chair here, so we can infer that there's more than just the people who we shot. So I'm going to use a flashbang. Now, flashbangs are pretty great in Doorkickers 2 compared to other games. So in other games like Ready or Not, or Ground Branch, or other games that feature the tactical aspect of which involve flashbangs, there is a sort of ambiguous understanding with flashbangs where you can't always be sure whether flashbangs will work, either on an enemy player or on enemy AI. And what's great about Doorkickers 2 is, like I said, that it gamifies quite a lot of the tactical genre and turns it into a puzzle that feels really rewarding. So as you can see here, when I pulled up the flashbang, I get a sort of radial insignia that shows what areas are going to be affected. And as you can see, I can move the flashbang insignia around, and it will produce different effects depending on where the flashbang lands. And I think that's really excellent because you need to be transparent to the player about what effects their actions are going to take, especially in a strategy game like this. And I think flashbangs in other games are a sort of risk that over time people grow to not use, or to overuse, so as to either guarantee that it works or to avoid having the mystery of whether it works or not at all. So I think in the limitations of Doorkickers 2, you actually get an outcome that is greater than the sum of its parts. So we're going to flash this, and it takes some time for the flashbang to the process to occur. So let's let that happen. Now the flashbang is about to go off. Here I'm going to start making my move. Now in typical close quarters combat fashion, we would do a kind of a full penetration battle drill 6, whatever it's called, in order to address points of domination, right? This first soldier might turn the corner here and establish this point of dominance. Meanwhile, we know that a person might be tucked into this corner, and that's another point of dominance. So maybe the first player goes here, second player goes up, or maybe the first player goes up and then the second player goes here. Or we may do something altogether not like that. But in this case, what we're going to do is we're actually going to do a limited penetration. And we are actually going to have both of the characters pi. And the reason why I'm doing that is because in video games, doing a full breach doesn't usually work out quite the way that people expect. And that's for a variety of reasons. So in the close quarters nomenclature, it's generally known that you want speed, surprise, and violence of action. And Controlled Pairs, the YouTuber who introduced me to Doorkickers 2, has that as sort of a mantra: speed, surprise, and violence of action. And the reason you do that is to scare or overwhelm the enemy into either acquiescence or into making a mistake. Now, AI does not respond psychologically in the same way, because AI does not understand things like fear or trepidation. They only respond to things that they are coded to do. So because of that, usually what players do when they're facing AI is they opt for a limited penetration so as to get rid of AI from a safe distance and behind cover. So that's what we're going to do. So let's see how it works. So as you can see here, this character actually did not manage to keep their gun up, so we're going to make a quick shift there. But it looks like we have most of the area clear. I'm actually going to move this character just a little bit just to make sure, yeah, that we've got that corner tucked. So we're moving on. So let's move our characters up here. Now that I've covered the basics, we can kind of move a little faster here so that we can start clearing these levels in a way that is more entertaining for you. One of the things that the game also does is that the camera can change to become either more top-down or more isometric. I happen to like the isometric or tilted version as for watching replays, but when playing in actuality, I prefer a little bit more top-down, so I seem to have a little bit more information and less of a perspective. So we're going to come up here. So we have been tested on combat in general in the outdoors by having an easy corner turn. We have been tested on the interiors for the first time without a door, which we used a flashbang, and we managed to eliminate the enemy who did not decide to push, but instead decided to bunker down. We're now dealing with a long, narrow hallway, of which we'll see many in Doorkickers 2. So these can be quite dangerous for a variety of reasons. First, we have something close quarters here that can be a threat, but we also may have somebody trained long who is willing to shoot through their fellow enemy combatants to try and kill us. So there's a lot of ground to cover very quickly. So there are a lot of ways that we can deal with this. So first of all, I'm going to have our first character have situational awareness, and we are going to get a frag grenade out here so as to deal with anybody in the close periphery. So let's do that now. We're going to use the opportunity to peek ever so slightly. So it looks like so far we do not have much of a threat. I should have brought this second soldier around, so we're going to do that. So we look long and we see that there is nothing. Now keep in mind that this could have been even more dangerous if there had been a soldier tucked in here, but the designers have wisely decided to keep many corners of these early levels flooded with detail in a way that shows you that a soldier could not be there. And I think that's smart just because the player has enough to do to figure out how to play the game for these first levels, so they're kind of giving you an easy mode here with the level design. We have windows here. We will be talking about windows later, but for now they're no factor. So moving right along, we are going to get rid of these pies, and we are going to move just ever so slightly into here just to make sure that there's no one tucked into the corner, and we're going to get these soldiers in here. As you can see, we had to do two things. We had to check this and we had to check this, and so for a large majority of the level you can do this with one character pretty easily, and even here this could be done with one soldier. But here we're about to enter the final testing ground where it's nice, very nice, to have two soldiers. And so in this case we have one soldier still looking long while the other checks up short. So luckily that worked out. We're going to check ammo. Soldiers have unlimited total ammo, but their magazines are still an issue, and it looks like here they're doing okay. So we have a split stack, and the reason for this is because we have multiple things that we want to check. Now luckily here we're going to be okay. So in all likelihood I will move the character all the way up, and we're going to have this character pie because I want to see as much as I can before I commit to this rather large room. So as you can see here, we have the ultimate test of the first level. We have a room, quite a big room, the biggest one we've seen so far, and we have a field of view blocker. We can't effectively see past this, which means that we have some dead space in the far corner. Not only that, but we have an open threshold threat here. So what we are going to do is we're going to split the stack, and we're going to have one soldier move this way to take care of the dead space, while the other soldier moves down here so as to alleviate the deep corner here, but also to be prepared for the next threat. So to do that, we need to get some kind of throwable long, and I'm going to have this soldier do it because they're the one that does not have situational awareness. So let's throw one there, and we're going to let that. The reason why I threw a flash is because I don't know about secondaries. There's a lot of equipment here. There's a propane tank here, which could have proved deadly. So anyway, so we're going to have our soldier with situational awareness go first. He is constantly going to be looking this way, and then we have a button hook here, and we're going to probably go to right here. We don't need to force this just yet, not with one soldier, so we want to maintain control. So it looks like we had two. We had one soldier under cover here, but was knocked out due to the flashbang, and then we had another soldier exactly where we thought that they would be here. Alright, so we have the final test, which is a button hook. Since the level has not ended, we can infer that there is still one final person here. So we are going to address that. First we're going to get our second character into position, who can see through this door and has better cover. So it's a safer way to pie as much as we can see. So we have done that, and now that we have some kind of cover on this, we can get a throwable in there since we have plenty of them. And we are going to pie this in a way that keeps our gun up, like we talked about before. So let's do that. And that's the end of the level. So here at the end, you're given a scorecard based on how you did. But I prefer the case where you get the intrinsic reward of feeling like you're a top tier operator, doing everything correctly. So I think more than the extrinsic reward of stars, which you can use to upgrade your soldiers, I think Doorkickers 2 does a much better job of working with the player to produce an experience, to produce a feeling. And over time, as the player gets better and better at using these strategies and getting more accustomed to how the game works, they will feel more and more, they will gain a general sense, a generalized intelligence of not only how to play the game, but how to feel like a special operations member. So that's the first mission. Here in a bit, we will move on to the second. This is the second mission of Doorkickers 2. Wood doors are easy. So in the first level, we talked about the irony of having a game called Doorkickers 2 and having no doors. That was sort of an outdoors grounded level. Here we have an apartment complex, it seems, and we experience doors for the first time. Doors in Doorkickers 2 are difficulty spikes, like I said before. And there are plenty to go off of here. But the game also introduces a second mechanic in the form of sniper support, which you can see here in the bottom left-hand corner. And you can see that there is a target reticle on this enemy, which implies that the sniper here that can see through the east windows here is acquiring a target and is honing in. So here in this level, we have an objective to secure an enemy high-value target. The level is designed to get you accustomed to doors, to get you accustomed to sniper support, and to get you accustomed to an objective that is not just kill everybody. One of the great things about this level is that even though there are doors, they alleviate, with the sniper support, one of the most difficult things about doors in the game, which is that you don't know what's on the other side. So lack of information can be just as deadly as whatever happens to be literally behind it. So as you can see, with the sniper support, we can already see one soldier here, and then we can see one soldier deep. So I have my soldiers here up in the top right-hand corner. They are still armed in the same way with M4s. I could have changed their loadout, but I decided not to do so just because I didn't think it was that big of a game changer. But in other missions, we will be changing what they have. So first of all, let's get situational awareness. I would not normally split the stack and move this character all the way around, but because I do know what's on the other side of this, I feel a lot more comfortable doing so. And another reason may also be because I don't know what's over here, and so the threat of this is much greater than the threat of being shot through the door as I'm attempting to change this character. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And that also gives us time for our sniper to open up, or to acquire a target, I should say. Now, I will say that I happen to know for a fact that in this level, the high-value target is here. Now, one thing you can do if you're a veteran is you can take a wall breach and you can go straight through here, knocking out a person hiding in this closet, so as to get to the high-value target faster without having to deal with 75 to 80% of the level. So there are ways that you can cheese some of the levels in a way that feels pretty good. So here we have the door handle is going to be on this side. So I'm actually going to open the door. As you can see, you can kick the doors. It's kind of nice that for a game called Doorkickers 2, can you kick the doors? The answer is yes. But here we're just going to open the door, giving our soldier access to this particular shot. We are actually going to move the reticle over there to the other soldiers so that we can get two at once. We are going to wait for an alpha code on this. So in Doorkickers 2, you can synchronize multiple actions using go codes. So we're going to allow some time to get this situated, to get the sniper support acquired with a target, and we are now going to do two things at once.
Alpha, go.
Didn't quite go out as planned, just because I thought clicking would be the same thing as pressing S for fire, which is something you should do down here. But in any case, we did what we needed, so we can move on. I'm going to hold this for just a second to see if there are any soldiers that push, and it looks like no insurgents decided to push. There are lots of ways that we could have handled this particular moment. So this soldier could have thrown a flashbang into here, giving us even more of a chance of shooting. Luckily, neither of our soldiers were injured. That may just be to how close to the beginning of the game that we are. I'm going to have this soldier peek ever so slightly here, so we can make sure that corner is dealt with. It is. Now, one of the great things about sniper support is we have perfect information of what is going on in this hallway. And that's good because the next closest threat, I would say, happens to be these doors over here. So we're going to take care of those now. If we were to go through these doors here straight to the high value target, one of the problems is that we would have to deal with the possibility of an enemy pushing behind us, which would be very deadly. So with that, we sort of have to take care of these doors first. And the best way to do that is from known territory down here, rather than from cramped territory down here with multiple doors. So one of the things that this layout does is it gives us a chance to look through while still having cover, in this case behind this refrigerator. If you listen closely, you can hear an ambient sound of the refrigerator. That's something we didn't talk about with the bathroom in the first level, but the game provides ambient noise for different objects and items to give your soldiers an embodied sense that they are in a room. So we're going to try kicking a door this time, and the reason why we're going to kick a door is because a soldier that is directly behind a door can be stunned, and since this room is so small, there's a high chance that the kick will stun the soldier and will give us the element of surprise. Now, just like the first level, one thing you're going to notice is that there are objects placed in dangerous corners of these rooms so as to minimize where the enemy might be and where we think the enemy might be in these moments. So once again, we're still sort of on easy mode. So let's kick this door down. Okay. Luckily here, nothing to be found. So we are going to use our first soldier to look in and to get out of the way as quickly as possible, should there be a soldier who pops here again. So here, I'm going to perhaps keep my soldier here because he still has access to looking through quite a lot of this second door. There would be ways of handling this which could be better. So one of the things that the game offers is if it will let me use it, is a slap charge. So slap charges are a way to deal with the problem of doors in precarious spots in a way that keeps your soldiers safe. So we're going to move ever so slightly just until we get the gun up. There we go. There's some texture clipping here, but that's okay. And then it'll allow us to open a door from afar. So we're going to do that. Looks like it turned out to be quite a bit of a success, but honestly, this was already in our favor just because, like we talked about with the objects before, there really wasn't a lot of opportunities for one of the soldiers to stick around. So with that, we're going to use this space, and we need to clear just a little bit left, and it looks like we're all clear. So we're going to move up here, and we are finally going to get our soldiers. I'm debating whether I want to put a soldier here, or if I want to put both soldiers here, moving from one place to another. I think since we know that this is dead space, we're free, or not dead space actually, discovered space, we're free to move through this hallway. So now we have the, like before with the first level, there is a test at the end. So one of the tests is that there's a big open dead space in the first level. This one has 2 doors that are parallel. And this is a real problem because whatever door you're clearing in one particular movement, the other door could spring at any time. In previous playthroughs of this level, if you don't shoot this soldier who is here, they go into here, and then what you have is an even worse problem, which is that you have an open threshold here and a closed door here. And typically you want to work open thresholds first and then closed doors second. If there's a threat, then that takes precedence over all of these, but in this case we have no threats that we can see as of yet. So in the past I have just worked this door, but this time, out of curiosity, I'd like to work the bathroom just to see if the game provides a random insurgent in here that I have to deal with. So let's figure out how to do that. So we have SA. I want to probably keep my soldier here, and we'll probably kick the door because of how close it is. I'm going to keep this soldier here plating in case they were to open the door here. I can have a quick reaction. And so hopefully that'll give us enough of a window to see into, and it does. So one soldier kicks, the other shoots, and there is a soldier in here. So I was luckily rewarded for my choice. Now I'm going to let that play out. I'm going to quickly peek this as soon as possible. This character is going to immediately turn so as to deal with the threat of if they get pushed. No one's in here, so we're going to return to the stack. Here I need to probably push the soldiers back a little bit because they are guns. There we go. That's a little bit more like it. Unfortunately now I am not close to the door, so I can't really do anything with it. So this soldier is going to open the door, and without a doubt we're going to have to, I don't want to do that, flash this room. Now, one of the reasons why I didn't use the slap charge there is because I know there's a high value target in there, and so I don't want to cause anything that could presumably kill our high value target. So in this case we're just going to use a flashbang while this soldier has their gun trained
Flash out!
The entire time. So one of the things that I want to talk about before we get into this room proper is that the game once again is using the level geometry to sort of help you. There's a very low likelihood that there is going to be a soldier barricaded here behind the bed, even though we can realistically expect that something like that would happen. So it narrows where the soldiers can be, so I know to put the flashbang here for ultimate effectiveness. Once we open the door here, as long as we have a gun trained, we can see quite a bit of this room already. In this next segment, we're going to have an interesting turn of events. We're going to have a soldier here, a bodyguard for the high value target, and then like I said before, we're going to have this person pop out and advance upon the player unsuspectingly, and that's a test from the first level. Here there's just a twist that we have to also deal with a high value target. So let's hope that we can do this effectively. Flashbang goes out. I come in. We're going to try and keep our soldiers back a little bit just so we can deal with multiple threats. Here we have the high value target that's in the way, but luckily the flashbang is giving us enough of a window to make an adjustment. So here we think that we're done, but the game is still going on. So there's quite a bit of trepidation, I'm sure. An advanced player probably knows that this soldier's here, but a beginner player, if the level has not ended, perhaps they think that the high value target needs to be taken to the evac area back at the beginning, and so perhaps they feel as though the level is already done. So we're going to keep a soldier trained on the door while we deal with the high value target up here. here the soldiers, or the enemy insurgent is pushing, and my first soldier is caught out of position. So we're going to make an adjustment to make sure that that is taken care of. I'm not quite sure why I crossed my soldiers here. Even an advanced player can make mistakes. So that'll be something that we talk about in the third mission, about why I like this so much.
Hands behind your back!
Okay.
Primary target secured.
And that's the second mission. So the second mission introduced us to doors and how to deal with them. It introduced us to sniper support, and it gave us an objective that was different from killing hostiles, which is securing a high-value target. One of the things I don't like about Doorkickers 2 is that the levels simply end when everything is taken care of, where in this level, a player may not be aware of how to maneuver a high-value target once they are in possession, and how to take them out of a particular area into a safe zone. So luckily that's one of the things that later levels will attempt to address, but for now there's sort of some ambiguity with the player and knowing quite what to do once they have the high value target. So let's move on to the next level. The third level is called All Together Now, and it does a couple things that are relatively new for the player, but can be very fun, especially for players who have decided to play in co-op. So All Together Now is another clear enemy hostiles, but the player has quite a lot more freedom in how to address this particular threat. So we have a commercial site, luckily just a corner store, kind of a everyday grocery store it looks like, and it seems as though we're going to have to take out hostiles with the presence of civilians. Instead of 2 soldiers, we get 4, hence the fun in co-op, as each player could get a soldier of their own if they're playing 4-player co-op for some reason. Or if you have 2-player co-op, then each soldier or each player gets 2. I'm showing you the loadout screen here because this is probably the first time I've shown it in this recording. As you can see, I have a briefing here with some challenges, eliminate all terrorists, and I have a loadout screen where I can see what all soldiers are carrying. And the only thing I wanted to show you here is that I'm going to be using slap charges, so I've placed slap charges for this particular assaulter and for this assaulter here. Now, as you can see, there are other types of soldiers here. There's support, marksman, and grenadier. All have a place in Doorkickers 2. This used not to be the case. In the beginning of the game, when it was released on early access, support was difficult to justify until the new suppression mechanic came along. So like I said before, Doorkickers 2 really excels at gamifying certain things that truly exist in modern combat. And one of them is the concept of suppression. And so support all of a sudden became a mainstay in many people's squads due to their power to suppress the enemy, which is sort of a stunning mechanic that makes them less accurate. It makes them less liable to push or move on the player. Marksmen can shoot things from far away, which will not necessarily be an issue in these tutorial missions, but will become very much an issue with larger maps later on. And we'll talk about range later when we talk about the difficulty of the game. And then we have the grenadiers. Grenadiers have high impact explosives that are great for clearing the way and for doing a lot of damage with indirect fire to things that we don't necessarily or can't necessarily see. In this small particular setting, we don't really need this level of firepower. We just need accurate assaulters who can move quickly. And because of that, we're going to have soldiers with M4s. No change to their weaponry, but as you can see, I'm keeping a soldier here. And the reason for that is because there are a couple access points to the store. We have a door here, we have a couple doors here, we have a window here, and we have a double window here. Now, interestingly, this window has, like a rook, a kind of sight line pretty much all the way across the level diagonally, which I think is a huge benefit that we are not going to waste. So we're going to turn the corner here, and we're going to get this soldier in position. We are going to No, we are not going to kick this door. We're going to apply a slap charge. We're going to do nothing with this soldier there, just going to provide security, because this one is the one with the slap charge. I apologize. And we're going to place slap charges on all these soldiers while the rest get ready. One of the hard parts about Doorkickers 2 is once the player gets access to more soldiers, being able to do multiple things at once. It's something that I still don't quite know how to do very well. Usually the game is about focusing on one particular engagement at a time. So a player can become obsessed with a particular moment and lose sight of everything that's going on around them. So we're going to put all these on a go code, and we're also going to put a flashbang through, if we can get the chance, before committing to this. And we're going to let the flashbang dictate when to blow up these doors. It looks like everyone is in position. One of the questions that you might be asking is where to put your soldiers in a limited penetration event like this. So I could probably do more to have my soldiers in such a way that they have unprecedented access to what they're seeing. So I'm hoping that this soldier can see into this pocket as well as into this pocket. I am sort of also hoping that this soldier can see into here, but I suppose I should probably tuck in this soldier a little bit more. I am hoping that this soldier can see deep into this pocket, but I don't think that's going to happen, so what I might do instead is turn this soldier a little bit more so that they'll be ready to look into this kind of dead zone in the middle where no one can really see until we get this soldier in so that they can look deep. I believe I am ready. So this is, I suppose, for lack of a better term, this is called a dynamic entry. This really excites players who have been playing perhaps Rainbow Six, going on Zulu, having a simultaneous entry, and so everything is sort of condensed into one powerful moment, which feels really good when it turns out well. Now, luckily in Doorkickers 2, the game gives you a lot of tools to make it turn out well. So let's see if we can do just that.
Flash out!
So we have done a simultaneous breach. The flashbang has gone out. We can see that we can already see a soldier, likely from this soldier's perspective. What's interesting is that we don't necessarily have view of anything else. So we're going to make adjustments ever so slightly. So we're going to have this person turn in. We're going to have this person turn in. And we're going to have this person pie ever so slightly. Let's see what happens. And it looks like we see quite a bit. Now we have a problem here where we have a soldier trained here. And let's hope that this soldier is shooting the right person, but we can't really necessarily control, at least I don't think. We can tell them, I suppose, to prioritize this target. But we're going to adjust botkin here, so hopefully they will take the shot there. Plenty of people suppressed. Plenty of people stunned. Things seem to turn out okay. Friendly fire, or collateral damage, is something that the game will do occasionally. I think it's a random chance. So here, as you can see, I'm pretty much firing shots directly into a civilian's line of sight, and I suppose if this civilian ducked, then they dodged a bullet that could have killed them. Alright, so as you can see, without even entering the room, we have covered quite a bit of the building. All that's really left is here. So limited penetration has done quite a bit for us. I'm actually going to have this particular soldier trained here, and I'm going to perhaps move this soldier in the hope of getting a flashbang deep. I need to move this soldier so that they have access to this last, well, maybe the last person who pushed. One of the things I don't like about this level is that this soldier pushes pretty much every time. I sort of wish that they would barricade themselves inside, forcing the player to commit into this room, perhaps giving the enemy an opportunity to attack the player in corners that they may not have checked. So one thing that we're going to do is we're going to check this back area. Nothing. So we're going to make our way forward here, and then if we can, we're going to try and get a flashbang into here to allow for our final movement. Usually there's a soldier that's barricaded back here, so we're going to see if we can deal with that effectively.
Flash out!
And that's that. One of the fastest tutorial missions, but it teaches a couple things about dynamic entry. It is a really controlled way of getting a player to focus on 4 soldiers, which is a new difficulty for them. We've had just 2, and now we have 4. So luckily here, everything was centralized into one particular encounter of a dynamic entry. So those 4 soldiers were all used in that particular moment, so it gave the player less to have to work with in their mind. So anyway, that's the dynamic entry mission, so let's move on to the next one. This next tutorial mission is called Why We Fight. Why We Fight didn't always used to be a night mission. In the past, it was a mission that took place, I guess, in the evening, but once the developers introduced the night mission as a possible one, they changed this to a night mission. So because of that, we're going to try and roleplay a little bit, and we're going to go with a stealth approach. I have suppressed MP5s with the proper ammunition, which allows them to shoot and to not be heard nearly as much. This mission, Why We Fight, is about a hostage rescue. Typically in this level we have 2 hostages. We have one that's centrally placed here, and we have another that's placed somewhere in one of these locked grates. A player is probably all too aware, if they're observant, that we are dealing with some new mechanics here. One of them is the form of locked doors. So we can infer that since this is our first hostage rescue, that a prisoner is likely going to be behind locked doors. So once again, that top-down view gives them an unprecedented access to how to address the threat or the level that they've been given. The other thing that this level tests is that we have 2 separate buildings. All the previous missions have been focused on one site, and here we have 2 separated areas, making it much harder. Though we have 4 soldiers, just like last time, there are 2 entryways that we can make, and one of the challenges will be trying to cover every angle so as not to be flanked. So because we have 2 ways in, the player has a choice to either go all in on one area or to split their group into 2 fire teams and to have one take one area and one take the other. I'm very much against splitting a fire team, so what I'm going to do here, let's get everybody in, and we're going to hit Shift F to keep the soldiers from firing unless they have to. Seems like it has remembered what I've done in the past. So I'm going to reset all this so that you can see it for the first time. We have a locked door here, and then we have a grate here. We haven't really seen grates before. We've seen windows that have become a factor in the previous mission, which is a new mechanic. Grates are doors that we can see through, which is a very complicated thing to have happen. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to use the grate to our advantage to try and peek through to see what we can see. Now, I would like to take all of my soldiers and to focus on one at a time, but unfortunately we can't. And that is because we have to work on providing security on this door should they push. Typically they do push, and that's something that I'll critique if and when it happens. So let's check this out. One thing that I do want to mention is that the game also features a slow motion option. So I'm going to hit L here, and as you can see, the game moves far slower, giving us a little bit more time as a player to intuit what is going on. So here, as you can see, we have 3 soldiers, and we only have 2 to shoot. So I'm hoping that we can take out these soldiers quickly. But what I may do is I may pull one of these soldiers so that I have more guns downrange for this particular encounter, and I will move them back up. And one of the great things about the rules of engagement that I've established here is that they won't fire until I tell them to. So as you can see, all of the enemy soldiers that I can see have someone targeting them. Something that I can't see is any soldier that might be in the dead space here. So I'm not as prepared for a secondary should that take place. So let me hit F to put this in motion. So now that that's done, I'm going to move this character here to prepare for a secondary, and I'm going to move this character back to provide coverage here. We have situational awareness with one of these soldiers, so the other one is going to open the grate. As you can see in slow motion, we're better able to see the sound registers that each action makes. So in the game, if you haven't noticed, every action that you make, every action that the player takes, has a certain amount of sound. And so because we haven't really been dealing with stealth, we haven't had to remark on it, but now, since we're on a stealth night mission, you can see here that everything has an effect. So this glass that I shot back here that went past this soldier in order to shoot this soldier here has likely spooked a couple, and as you can see, they said they're here, so they are pretty aware now, I think, of the fact that we are here, though maybe not necessarily where we are in the level. Now, because it's a night mission, we have much better visuals because we have night vision goggles. Their range of what they can see is far shorter, so we have a pretty distinct visual advantage here. So I'm going to start moving my stack in to clearing the threats one at a time. So let's get these guys established, and then we're going to pull here, and we're going to bound. So I want to maintain security on this door, but I'm using the visual cones to sort of establish a new position tucked in, because I want all my soldiers in. There we go. I'm going to increase the speed back to normal. I simply wanted to show you that mechanic, and now that I've shown you, I'm ready to move on. So we're weapons free at this point, so I'm going to remove the Shift F. So we have an open threshold here, which leads into a pretty dangerous tunnel that I'm not really interested in dealing with as of yet. I would rather work around this way, and that is because we have a breaker. So in night missions, you also have the ability to knock out breakers to buildings, so as to turn off the lights, to give you the advantage that you have outdoors, indoors as well. So with that, we have to do 2 things. We have to provide, well, I suppose 3 things. We have to provide security to the rear, we have to provide security laterally, and we have to provide enough security to where once we enter these rooms, we have someone guarding in case they are going to push. So I unfortunately did not bring slap charges, which is something that I would have used here because we have a long, narrow hallway. So that was a stupid decision of mine, but in any case, we're going to move these characters up. I'm actually going to have this soldier monitor this hallway all the way until they get to here. And this soldier is going to continue moving in this direction while keeping focused on this the entire time. And we're going to keep this soldier focused on the rear because I don't really know who's planning on pushing. We can see a quick insignia, the quick silhouette of an enemy here. So we know that there are threats in there. We just can't access them as yet from here. So we have a distinct problem. We are going to have to quickly move here so that this person can open the door. And now we're going to have that soldier return to their position here. And we're going to prepare for a transition. So I want this soldier here looking this way. I want this soldier here addressing the breaker. And I want this soldier providing cover just in case someone decides to push in a vulnerable moment. So let's do all that at once. Maintaining security here. And we have knocked out the electricity. Now one of the things that's interesting about this window here is that we can use it to our advantage. So I'm actually going to have this soldier throw a flashbang very quickly into this room so as to prep us for when we open this door here in a little bit. So let's do that. And luckily we just in time managed to open that door. So I'm going to pull these characters back so that they have enough room for their MP5s. And it looks like several things happened simultaneously. So we got pushed here, so it's good that we provided cover there. We were able to shoot 2 soldiers here. And hopefully it looks like our sound profile managed to stay within this range. Of course, the flashbang produced quite a large sound. Can't really see how far that sound went. And so far no one has pushed here, which is fascinating, just because in past playthroughs someone has always pushed there. So let's do a limited penetration here. I just want to peek and see, yes indeed, there are a couple soldiers here. And we're at 19 rounds and 20 rounds, so I feel pretty good about that moving into this next space. One of these next parts that we're going to have to deal with is the prospect of a suicide bomber. In one of these rooms there is a prisoner, but there is also a insurgent with bombs strapped to their chest. And we can see them through these grates. So once we open this door, we're going to see not only into this room, but also into these grates here. So it's a pretty risky moment, simply because there is not a lot of time between when the suicide bomber gets to us and when they detonate. So it comes as a surprise to a new player, and likely they'll have to do this level again because of that. So what I want to do is get a player, or get the soldiers in an advantageous position. So I can see that there is a prisoner here, which means that the suicide bomber is not here, so likely will be here. So what I might do is the soldier who does not have situational awareness is going to try and throw a flashbang deep into here, which is something that I would want to do anyway. I'm not sure how much I believe the fact that a soldier can throw through not just one threshold but 2, but the game allows me to do that. It would be a pretty amazing arm to throw and get through the grate, but I'm going to use it to my advantage. So we're going to have this soldier pretty much trained on this the entire time, and have this soldier look here and to maintain security on this door should anyone decide to push through here. So a couple things to cover. So as you can see here, we took care of the suicide bomber. We managed to clear most of this room, and our secondary soldier here didn't see anything deep in this corner, but saw something long across into the second building. And pretty amazing shot, if I do say so myself. So we've cleared enough of this that I feel confident moving this soldier up to C down this hallway. So we're going to do that now to keep them relevant for what's about to happen next. We're going to kick this door down, or not kick it, we're going to open the door. And we're going to have the soldiers move in. Looks pretty clear. We have not necessarily cleared a lot of the space, so I'm going to leave this prisoner here just because they become a burden. we're going to use a dynamic hammer here to manually breach this, but what I should have used was slap charges, so pretty foolish to not come prepared. As you can see, it makes a lot of sound and it takes a lot of time. Good thing to show to a player who may not play this game. And I'm clearing this just because I sort of have no choice. I would really like to start addressing this larger building, the secondary building, but I can't really do so without knowing that my back is cleared. Honestly, we do not really need to manually breach this door, just because we've already cleared it since it was a grate, but it's nice to do for fun. Alright, so we're going to move our soldiers back into safe space, and we are going to have them sprint. So sprinting is a thing that you can do in the game. It sacrifices being able to shoot, gets you quickly from A to B. Alright, so we're still maintaining security. I think one of the hard parts about levels with larger amounts of soldiers is, and longer ranges, is that inevitably you end up having soldiers staying at one spot for a long time. But since this is too dangerous of a flank for us to ignore, we're going to keep that the way it is. So we're going to make a stack here to prepare for an entry into this room. So we're going to prepare a flashbang here. One of the difficult parts about Doorkickers is that it doesn't really have a good method for chaining together events related to one another. So the game thinks that this door is still closed, so throwing a grenade through it with a second person instead of this first person is sort of difficult to do. What I may do is I may have this first soldier throw the flashbang in while this second one covers over their shoulder, which in my opinion is not a great way to do it, but let's check and see how that works out. And it immediately makes me suffer for it. So we have a distinct problem where we have multiple soldiers who want to fire, but we have some characters in the way. I'm going to try and pull this soldier back who is up front, and let's see if that works out. We got lucky there. Usually in those scenarios, we pay for it rather badly. So as you can see, I was uncomfortable with the first soldier throwing a flashbang into the room for that very reason. Luckily, we had enough awareness and cover from our other two soldiers to take care of that scenario, but I imagine that for soldiers with not a lot of experience, that would have been kind of a disaster. So in case you don't know, the game does have an experience system. You can see their rank next to their name, and this allows them to shoot more accurately, to respond faster, to have better mobility. So I've been playing the game for long enough to where this squad is very well trained. Alright, so we're going to enter. As you can see, once again, they're following their rules of providing an easy entry for the player, with a lot of these objects tucked into corners so that you have less to worry about. So we're going to have these soldiers come in. As you can see, there's a little exclamation point. The flashbang did go out. How about that? Anyway, the exclamation point is letting you know that you are in light, so you are visible, which can be dangerous. So we're going to have the characters slowly move. I'm going to have one character cover long, maybe two, while this character looks to see, and yes, the prisoner is there. I want to clear this building before moving this prisoner, so I'm going to move these soldiers to do just that. We have another bathroom scenario, so we're going to have one character or one soldier here. We're going to have another preparing. I'm going to have this soldier stand back a little bit because I want to kick the door. This soldier apparently is not close to the door. It thinks that it wants the breaker, which is really frustrating considering that the handle is right here. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to have them flip around to the other side, and I cannot do that either. So one of the things I'm showing you is the context sensitivity of the game, where there are only a handful of things that you can do, and because there's so great a complexity in this area between the curtain and the breaker and the door, there's an issue where it doesn't really know what you want as the player. So I'm having to put my soldier in a compromising position here by putting them pretty much directly in front of the door instead of a corner. Luckily there's no one here, so I don't have to necessarily worry about that. What I'm going to immediately do is I'm going to have the character's turn, because we have this threat of the door here to take care of. And I'm going to, instead of covering this soldier, I'm going to try and push this door here. I'm going to actually have this character come around and monitor if anyone is trying to flank us from the other side, because I left that ability open. I don't think the game is willing to be that complex in its flanking maneuvers, but just in case. So here we have another door scenario here. This one's quite deadly for a variety of reasons. We're going from a smaller space to an outdoor space, and it makes me want to not do this at all. This is actually something I've never done on this level before, is working this from the outside. So I'm going to tuck this soldier here so that this person has access to the door frame, which is very, very dangerous. So I'm going to have this soldier come up to see if they can monitor at least some of this, should that, or when that occurs. So this is a no-win scenario, so I'm already injured. The soldiers are already trained on this door, and my character is tucked into a corner, so they don't really have very many maneuvering options. I can try and push this character out quickly, which I may do, and I'll have this character turn, because this soldier looks like they're already dead, so I just need to get this one out of the field of fire. So I'm going to do that, and I have another problem. So we're going to leave this scenario immediately. I'm hoping that I can deal with it from a safer position. We're going to maintain security while this soldier gets some indirect fire in there. Should probably reload. And they are going to try and push. Finally, I get to talk about this. So this soldier is pushing, but this door is locked, and there is no real time dilation between a door that's not locked and a door that's locked. The soldiers will just open the door regardless. Part of me wishes that there would be a sound effect of a key or a lock turning and the soldier opening it, but in any case, it's a good thing we provided rear security all that time. There are a couple scenarios that I put my soldiers in that I would not recommend, but it gives you an idea of the new added difficulty of dealing with hostages, dealing with suicide bombers, dealing with a night stealth mission, and doing so with 4 soldiers having to coordinate differing or separate scenarios simultaneously. So it's an added little bit of mental challenge for the player that I really enjoy. Why We Fight is one of my more favorite levels of this tutorial series. This next level in the tutorial series is called Rescue at Dawn, and in my opinion it showcases a little bit more of what makes Doorkickers 2 more difficult as the player encounters level after level. So we have a quite large outdoor environment. Most of my soldiers are prepared for war. I'm actually going to give this soldier, I usually do a lot of this beforehand so you're not wasted time, or you don't have time wasted, but I'm going to give that soldier a slap charge because of something I know that's going to happen later. So we have the same scenario as before. We have 2 buildings, one a more pressing building than another, and we have 2 entrances just like last time. We have a graded entry, and then we have a locked door entry. I'm going to show you the more difficult pressing I guess, combat intensive entry here for a certain purpose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin the process of placing a wall charge here, and I'm going to start prepping on a go code. Many grenades. And that is because I don't necessarily trust what is on the other side here, but I'm going to do this to prove somewhat of a point. Now, one of the things that you'll notice is that in this outdoor environment I can actually throw grenades over the wall. So let's do that. So I'm going to hit A, and everyone's going to throw grenades over. I have some view here. I'm going to blow this. Not quite yet. Because I have some soldiers who are out of position. So I would like to provide some view of what's going on here before I start shooting. Sorry I'm not talking as much for this part, but this is a pretty intensive moment where there is a lot going on. So the reason why I did this is for a couple reasons. First, I wanted to show you that there really is no time mechanic that has been introduced yet that puts me in a position where I have to hurry. So throwing all these frags over and having as much violence as I can to achieve dominance is a great strategy. The second thing is that this is a very dangerous entry because of the amount of vantage points seen, not just outside, but inside as well. This level is one of the longer range missions that we've seen so far, so I have to be very careful about how to move my soldiers. One of the weird things about Doorkickers 2, I'm not quite sure what this guy's doing. There we go. Glitched out. One of the weird things about Doorkickers 2 is that the wider and more expansive that a mission becomes, the less soldiers seem to move, which is kind of bizarre. You would think it'd be the other way around. But the greater sight lines create a scenario where every single movement has to be adjusted very carefully, because we're dealing with every step causing so many more ramifications as to who might be where. So as you can see, we're pretty far into the mission, 27 seconds, and we haven't really gone far or done much. And as you can see, we're taking out soldiers clear across the map. I'm going to let that breathe a little bit. As you can see, there's still a soldier coming around here. One of the key takeaways that I want you to have from this video is that I happen to believe that there is a mantra in Doorkickers 2 that range equals difficulty. And the reason I feel that way is because what we talked about, where the more sight lines that the character has to deal with, the slower the characters tend to move, and because of that, the more difficult it becomes to do anything. Every choice that you make for movement becomes wider with consequences. Whereas with more close quarters events, you tend to have far greater control over what happens in any given map. As you can see here, all I've done is I've moved characters just barely from a position right here to right here. I've bounded a single step, and as you've noticed, each time I've had to deal with soldiers long. This level can be easier than you might think because of that, but it can also be harder if a player is not ready to deal with all of these moving parts. I want to use it. Case in point. So this character can see far away, this person, but I don't necessarily trust getting to that in time. This would be a great opportunity for a grenadier. I do not have a grenadier, so I'm going to try and deal with this problem in the best way that I know how, by getting a grenade out. Looks like we got good feedback on that, so I think we're okay. Let's reestablish, and it looks like it's okay. Great level for a marksman or a support as well. I was not interested in that because I wasn't interested in talking about it just yet. We're going to shift into our next bounding because I want to get this slap charge placed. As we can see, we have something that we're going to have to deal with here.
Flush out.
Let's hope that this works. We're going to move ever so slowly. And that turned out to be the whole mission. One of the things I'd like to show here is the replay mechanic. So one of the great parts about the game is the opportunity for replay, which didn't come out on release, but is here now. So for a mission as intense as this one with its open, it's nice to have an opportunity to see your work in action without having to make all of the decisions. You can just sit back and see what effect your decisions have, and you can get an opportunity to see what you can do better. So the reason why I'm showing you the replay for this particular map is to reiterate my range is difficulty thesis, but also so you can see just how little my soldiers are actually moving. Each infinitesimal step leads to such larger consequences. So one of the tricks of a map maker is to try and create larger maps, but to make them still feel small and controlled. A map maker doesn't necessarily have to do this. If they like this particular type of strategizing and tactics, then they're free to do so. But I'm just amazed at how little my soldiers moved throughout this process, to the point where we never left the opening courtyard. So is that a well-designed map or a not well-designed map? That's for you to decide. But I still think that the game teaches you if it's an intentional mistake or an unintuitive mistake, or if it was a planned concept for how this mission would go about. Didn't have to rescue the hostiles, didn't have to get them to a safe zone because we killed everybody rather quickly. So that's the Rescue at Dawn mission. So we talked last time about how there is really no rush for the player when it comes to hostages. So this is the game taking a dialectical shift and saying, what if there was a time mechanic? So this is the Jihadi live show, and our goal is to stop these executioners from killing these hostages. As you can see, we have a camera which gives us access to things that we can't necessarily see on our own. I don't really like missions of these types. I feel like this is very gamey. I feel as though in real world scenarios there's a problem of having this seem very realistic. This feels very Hollywood to me. But in any case, we have 15 seconds to get to this hostage that is deep into this apartment complex. So instead of having to go all the way around, we are effectively choosing to bypass that with a wall breach here, and we're hoping that there are no hostages on this couch, or else the mission ends. One of the interesting things about the game is that also insurgents can randomly be placed in the map based on the level designer's instructions. So in this case, we got lucky. We do have sniper support here on the northwest corner, and the executioner is easily seen on this bedpost. Sometimes these two are switched, and sometimes the executioner is right here in the dead space and we can't see. And that's a real problem because it lowers the amount of time we have to react and save this hostage before this executioner kills this hostage. So basically, what that means is that sometimes the level will be easier for you than others, depending on how the soldiers are randomly placed. I happen to think that that's a good thing, just because it adds some variability and some replayability to the level. If you don't like it, you could just go and hit restart mission over and over again until you get the outcome that you wanted to. But I can understand how some people might not like that just because they want a clear, transparent, static, defined levels that they can compare themselves to others. So I do see it as a trade-off. And luckily it's a trade-off that I don't really care about because I'm just not that competitive about how things turn out. So putting this wall breach here allows us to also have the sniper train on the executioner, but we don't have very much time. So we're going to have to move quickly to stop both executioners. We have MP5s on our soldiers with hollow sights to allow for the greatest amount of speed. As you can see here, I fell for the mistake that I talked about earlier, which is that I could have been doing two things at once. I could have been opening this door and clearing the hallway at the same time as I was breaching this. But in the game, the player wants to keep focused on one thing at a time. So, kind of an unfortunate reality that as I'm recording here, I'm being privy to. So this room is clear. I'm starting to move into the second position. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to pull this guy so that he can put a slap charge on a locked door. And I'm going to switch up with these soldiers here. I'd like to have some coverage here as he's doing that. I would like to get some guns looking downrange here. Everything looks good. As you can see, new sound effects for where we are in the space. Getting this set up. As you can see, we've dealt with the time mechanic here, and there is no time mechanic here because we took out the executioner. So there really is no rush from here on out, which I prefer. I like to take my sweet time. So we're going to use that to our advantage by getting a dual system set up here for simultaneous dynamic entry. But first, I need to take care of what is going on out here in the hallway. So let's do that real quick. I have to hold this. I'm going to put these both on a go code. As you can see here, we have some dead space here, so we're going to have to account for that before we go in. So I would like to have this soldier a little closer. I'd like to have this soldier a little closer, perhaps looking that way. We are in position.
Go.
So we have 3 hostages. Now, for the sake of argument, I could keep these hostages here and clear the rest of it, but I would at least like to show a little bit of how the hostage rescuing mechanics work. So we're going to use these 2 soldiers to maintain security while we address these hostages here and here. So let's do that real quick. We're going to rescue, use the rescue button here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So
safe now.
we can actually have them run to the exit on their own. This will be interesting because there's a chance that this hostage may go this way just because that's the clearest line instead of going through here. There's a good chance that this one may simply take the path here. So we're going to rescue this hostage. Let's see what happens. And just like that, yep. So
Hostage
the
secure.
Thank you.
exit
Hostage
mechanic
secured.
is pretty great, so you don't have to deal with it, but also it can put them in danger if something were to have occurred here, because I don't want to consider this fully cleared space. Alright, so let's get our soldiers back.
Hostage secured.
So all hostages are secured, I'm fairly certain, but we also have to eliminate all the terrorists. So we have a new mechanic here with time, but we have an old mechanic here that we've seen before in the second mission where we have 2 parallel doors. Now in this case we have an open threshold, so we're going to have to work that first. This time around we have 4 soldiers, so in this case we actually have quite a bit of control over this scenario, and it's actually one of the more fun clearings that you can do in this game that I love. So here we have soldiers looking across from each other, and we have situational awareness for both of them. So we're going to try and squeeze a little bit here so that we have enough room to get a flashbang into this room that feels like it would be effective. So we're getting pushed, it looks like. So our flashbang has been stymied, but in this case we have the opportunity to provide cover on all spaces, so we're in the clear. Pretty effective. Let that breathe a little bit, and we're going to re-prep. We have plenty of flashbangs, we have plenty of time. We're not worried about any executioners. So we're going to keep squeezing here and doing a limited penetration. Eventually, though, the player will have to button hook. So we're going to have both of these change over at the same time. Like before, we don't necessarily have to peek in too far into these rooms. And as you can see, that worked out pretty well. So that was the Jihadi live show. Probably my least favorite of the tutorial missions, simply because it feels very melodramatic, very Hollywoody with the limited time mechanic. But as we talked about before, Doorkickers 2 gamifies a lot of things in a way that's pretty satisfying. So knowing that the player has an unlimited amount of time for most scenarios, there has to be a way for the developer to stress the player with time in a way that feels not only authentic to the tone and the world that they've built, but also feels effective in a way that pushes the player mentally into something that they may not have done before. So I respect it, even though I don't like it so much. So that's the Jihadi live show. So one of the, I guess, disagreements I have with the game is the CIA faction. So in Doorkickers 2, there are different factions that the player can use. This last mission, Killing Time, is meant to address what it's like to have a new faction. I've never played with the CIA, and I don't particularly care for it. It feels very gimmicky to me. So we'll be doing this last mission, maintaining our Delta Squad. There are a lot of methods that I could do here. In fact, I may replace one soldier for another, so that I can at least show you what the possibilities are for a differing experience. So this is a Killing Time, and it's very fun in the sense that all we have to do is kill all terrorists, and with the amount of frag grenades that we're bringing in, we could almost eliminate all the terrorists without firing a single shot. Here we're going to use the grenade feature fairly quickly. We're going to train our soldiers onto this longer range encounter and take care of it before we have to deal with anything coming from down here. But rest assured they will push here. What I may do is I may get a grenade off here right off the bat. And the reason for that is because I want to show you what this map also teaches, which is secondaries. So there are propane tanks here, and by setting off this explosive, you are going to get quite a big bang. So let's at least let this run just a little bit. As you can see, we have a locked door being opened immediately, which I consider pretty problematic. We already have a grenade coming out, but we can start taking steps to cover certain areas, which we're going to do now. And there's the secondary explosion. So hopefully that takes care of most of the combatants that were shooting at us originally. Starts off with a bang. I do like missions like this. It feels like a nice change of pace. Just start a mission so erratically. So we're going to have one soldier maintain security on the top of this for quite some time. And it looks like, since Kramer happens to be here already, that he's going to be the lucky one to stay put. So we're going to spend most of our time working this threshold on the south and working our way east. Now, we have a lot of frag grenades, so we're not going to be very bashful about using these. If only because it's good to show you that indirect fire is just as effective, if not more effective in some cases, than direct fire. So we're going to move our soldiers in, and we're going to have them continue to look downrange. Overall, if it weren't for the CIA faction, I would be sort of disappointed with the outcome of this level, because it's not really teaching that many new things to the player, at least directly. I can show you one interesting thing that a lot of players don't necessarily realize, which is that you can not only crouch, but you can use crouching to get to places where you can see things that the enemy cannot see. So here I'm crouched with the grenadier, and I can see into this room. Not only that, but I could throw flashbangs or smoke grenades if I wanted to. Now, using the grenade launcher would be something else entirely, as I don't believe I could blind fire that. I would have to stand for that. But that's an interesting thing to see for this longer range here. I'm actually going to keep this grenadier here because I may want to use the grenade launcher to go deep, and have them stand and do that once the opportunity is set. Until that time, I'm going to have these soldiers clear this bathroom. Now, at this point, this is standard. We've cleared enough bathrooms that we know exactly what to do. So I'm going to have this soldier come here. This soldier look in because it's a corner-fed room. I'm going to have this soldier kick, and I may have this soldier wait a little bit. It looks like there's nothing. Very good. Maintaining security on the outside, making our way around. Let's get a... Well, there's no reason not to use a frag grenade. Secondary explosion again, this time from the likely gas oven. We could use a slap charge here and pull back, but instead I'd like to use the abilities of my grenadier and get some high explosives downrange. Excellent timing, boys. So, one of the reasons why I wanted to do that is I was planning on using 2 grenades, one to blow this door, but then the second one to get this door, so that I have a vision all the way down. Because probably the most difficult part of this level occurs here, where there are so many thresholds to work with that it becomes sort of a nightmare for the player to have to come to terms with. But in this case, we have the door opened for us, so we get a chance to use more grenades. And that's the end of the mission. So, not necessarily the best way to test the player, but then again, I'm not really playing the level as it was intended, which is with the CIA doing undercover work instead. So if you'd like to see that, you're welcome to check out some other people who have done it fairly, I would say. But I wanted to stay coherent and consistent with the Rangers. So I hope you've enjoyed this guided tour of Doorkickers 2. There's a lot of things that I probably could have talked about, which I may talk about in the future. One of the reasons why I wanted to get this out is before the campaign has been released. If you don't know, Doorkickers 2, the developers, are working on a fully fledged set of campaigns. One that's a little bit more handcrafted, and another that is more randomized. And so it is my hope in the future that I'd like to cover that with some kind of video. But I wanted to get these out because I wanted to address a lot of the fundamentals of what I love so much about Doorkickers 2 and how it will likely stand the test of time in a genre that has had a lot of ups and downs, and in recent years has seen a lot of downs, just in the sense that a lot of AAA developers have lost faith in the tactics genre. It seems as though they are returning to that genre, but in a form that is still fairly arcade-like, and so lacks a lot of the fidelity of complexity that I would like to see more of. Until then, we have Doorkickers 2. So if you've been watching for this long, I do appreciate this guided tour. I plan on covering, like I said, Doorkickers 2 in the future. But until then, I hope you have a great day. Enjoy your time, and I'll see you later.